then I didn't get out of there until the 18th of the 12th month. So I was that long in hospital. This chunk of shrapnel had gone into my foot, in the center of the foot here, and had gone, no, it hit me in the toe up here and had gone down into the center of my foot down here. And when they took it out, they didn't make a good job. They'd done something to one of the tendons or something, so I was in hospital for some time. And when I was in there, the first night we were in the hospital in Brussels, these V1 bombs had gone over. You've heard of them, have you? These things that were rocket, or just a pulsating engine, and they used to take them over England, and as soon as the engine quit, down they'd go on a big bomb and blow things up. And I was laying in bed, and I didn't have crutches or anything at that time, and I was in bed, this foot, and this darn thing was going over straight over the hospital. Didn't go very far till the engine quit, and down she came, but that was the closest I was to one of those. Good job it didn't hit the hospital.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't have got out of there fast enough.
And all you can do is sit there and wait.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So then I was in there for that time. In fact, right now I'm drawing a pension for that foot. Yeah. And then from there we went to Blankenberg in Belgium. That was where I caught a boat. I forget what the name of the boat was now. Out of Ostend in Holland to go back to England. And you maybe heard of the time that the Germans made to come back just before Christmas and so on of 1944, when the weather was so bad. They started made a not too far from Belgium and so on. They attacked all the British airfields and so on they could, and they lost a lot of airplanes and so on over this. And the weather was down low and so on, and the bombers couldn't get out of England, and it had been for about 2 weeks. And the day that I was going from Belgium down to Ostend to get on this boat was the only day it was sunshiny, and the Americans were out in full force with their bombing group, and you could see them coming across from England. And you've seen these vapor trails that come behind the aircraft. Every one of these airplanes, because the air was so damp, was leaving a vapor trail behind it. And as the airplanes went over, it just closed it in a complete sheet of cloud. There were so many vapor trails because they flew hundreds of them close together, so on. But they went in, and that stopped the German retaliation and so on going across. It was very interesting. And then we got Ostend, and we got on the boat, and they said, well, this is the first time there's been a boat go out of here since they tried to take all the bombs or all the mines and so on out of the harbor. We hope we don't hit one. I thought, thanks a lot. But we got out of there and back to England.
Made it safe.
Yeah. And that was fine. And do you want me to carry on?
Well, after that you were flying again?
Yeah, and after that I went to, they sent me back to Warrington in England, which was really, in fact, before I got there, when I got to England, I contacted people that I knew just outside of London. I went and visited. I was there with them for Christmas that year and stayed there, and then I had to go to Warrington, which was up north, and I thought, well, maybe I'm going to get back home. No, they didn't do that, so they sent me down to 83 GSU, which is another unit at West Hampton, and then I went, done some more flying there.
Did your foot affect your flying, Frank, while it was still, was your flying affected at all?
It didn't seem to be, no. It cleared up and was pretty good. And then afterwards, I got back to Vauquel on the squadron on the 1st of February in 1945. So that's how long I was away. And it was after that that I'd done my operational flying. And it was interesting. And we were there, and then from there we went to different units across their different airfields, and they were all numbered. In Vauquel we were there, and then we went to what they called B100, which was at the name of place by the name of Gauche, which was in just over the German border. And then from there we went to B110, which was at Akmir, which was another place in Germany. And from Akmir we went to B150 at Celle, which we were there when the war ended at Celle. And some of those pictures in the books are around that area and so on.
Do you remember VE Day, how you felt that day? Celebrate?
Yes, it was very, very nice. And I remember one big thing they had on VE night. They decided that they were going to have a big bonfire. Very, very nice. So they had everything on this bonfire. I'm talking old trucks, German trucks, and old German aircraft, everything on this big bonfire. And they had it soaked with aviation gas, 1,000 gallons or maybe more than that dumped on this thing to get it going. And there was a hold the fort, don't do anything. And then they found an old ME-109, a German fighter aircraft. That said, we got to burn that thing. So they went out and hooked on it with a big army truck. One of these 4 wheels on the back and 2 on the front, all driving, you know. And they got in close to this fire with it, or turned around to get it in close to the fire. They got the truck stuck. And they couldn't, and it was a new truck that only had it about 2 weeks or something at this unit. Finally, somebody said, hell with it, and they threw a match at truck and all. It was a good fire. But it was a celebration for VE Day. Yeah, and
What happened after that? Did you think you would be involved in the fight against the Japanese?
well, we didn't know, but we were stuck in England or in Germany with the Air Force of Occupation, and we were at Celle, as I said, and then while we were at Celle, they decided that the Canadians would have to go back to Canadian units. Well, this was fine. We didn't mind that. And we were supposed to report to 439 Squadron, which was a Canadian unit, and they were up at Flensburg, which was on the Danish border. And we found out, Jim and I found out that they had just been back to England. This is 2 or 3 weeks after the war was over. They had been back to England on a gunnery course, just to keep in practice and so on. And our 175 was due to go back on this gunnery course to England. So Jim and I said, we'd like to go back to England. So we got contacted different people and said, why don't we go to 439 after we come back from the gunnery course? Well, they said, I guess we can let you do that. Sure, that was fine. So we went back to England with our old Squadron 175. And it was in southern England, this gunnery course, and it was just a lot of good times and a bit of flying and doing some practice runs with rockets and stuff like this, you know. And I was good, and we were there. I forget how long it was, but maybe tell me here. Yeah, we went over on the 28th of the 5th month, and we left there on the 16th of the 6th month. So we were there a little over 2 weeks. That was fine, but in that period of time, we left Warmwell to go back to Celle again and turn the airplane and then transfer to 439. And when they were ready to take off, we'd gone down to the east coast of England in the morning. The weather was sort of duff. And it was clearing up after dinner, so they said, well, now we'll take off and head across the channel. But you couldn't go across the channel after the war with one single engine aircraft. You had to be accompanied by another one. But when they were starting up these airplanes to make the trip from Manston across the channel then, after dinner, somebody set fire to one of the Typhoons, or it caught fire when they were starting it. Well, they couldn't hold the others back, so they said, well, they had to go, but they said they had to have another airplane, so Jim and I said, well, we'll stay with the airplane if you like. So they said the way they went, so Jim and I stayed with one serviceable airplane, one Harbour that was serviceable, or one Typhoon and one that wasn't. So we tried to get parts, or they tried to get parts for this air and get it fixed up and so on. But I think it took about a week or 10 days before, more than that. We were almost a month in England. So Jim would take the airplane for a day, and the serviceable one, looking for parts, you know. We didn't care if they found them or not. He'd go to different places where we'd been. And of course they'd fuel up the airplane, couldn't find parts and stuff like this. So he'd come back, and he had friends or relatives in London, and then he'd go and visit his relatives, and I'd take the airplane and go and other stations we'd been at, and then I'd come back and he'd take it again. And I visited these friends that I knew just north of London. So it was a good time we had, but eventually they stopped our time. They flew the parts back from the continent to fix this airplane. So then they said, now you can take the Harvard, or the airplane, and go back, we got it fixed, and go back across. So Jim and I went back over, and we got back to Schleswig on the 7th of the 4th of the 7th month. Got back there, and that was July, 4th of July. And on the way back, we landed at Eindhoven for fuel, which is the middle of Holland. And then we went up along the north coast of Europe on the North Sea, and we flew low level across there, just out of devilment. And the seals were laying along all the little reefs out into the water, and we flew across there chasing the seals into the water. It was nice to see them jumping off the water. And then we went back to Schleswig, then B-164, and we dropped the airplanes off, and then the next thing we were transferred up to 439 at Flensburg, which was next to the Danish border. And then when after we'd done a bit of flying around there, and we went from basically let people know that there was people around, you know. And we used to do fly pasts at some of the bigger major centers. We had one fly past at Bremerhaven, which was a big German town right on the coast. And I think there was 3 squadrons formed this one formation, so that'd be, I guess we had about 30 airplanes in this formation. I know it took 15 miles to turn it around out over the North Sea and come back across this town. And I can still remember going across it. I think we were flying tight formation, and I can see church steeples going by and so on, so they were down pretty low. And I wasn't leading anything, but then we got back, no mishaps, or went back and landed. But this is the type of thing that done after the war, just to let the Germans know that we were still around.
How long were you there? When did you eventually head home?
I came back home on somewhere after, when did I come home? Well, we went to Bournemouth on the 26th of the 8th month. And I got back home here on what? Should be able to tell you. No, I stopped in Toronto on the way home. Yeah. Yeah. 13th of August was about the last time I flew the Typhoon. And anyway, when we were ready to come home, we'd been at Flensburg, and this was after the victory in Japan, after VJ Day. And we were at a little airstrip somewhere in Holland on VJ night, and everybody sort of got plastered and so on. But anyway, we were on our way to Paris on leave from Denmark to Paris. Now that's a long way. And I forget where we stayed, but we stayed one small town or one city and then on to Paris. And there was quite a bunch from this one, or from 439 Squadron were in Paris. In fact, when we got recalled to go back home, there was 12 pilots from 439 Squadron in Paris on leave. But anyway, we got to Paris, and we were only there about 4 days or 5 days, because we'd figured on 2 weeks. But anyway, they got a signal that you report back to Flensburg and take the airplanes back to England. Well, while we're in Paris, I've got some photographs in there of things I took in Paris, the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe, and we went to see the Folies Bergère. Have you ever heard of it? It's a famous nightclub in Paris, and we managed to get to see that, and all the girls and stuff like this. And then when we left there, we flew back to, I forget what station we went back to, and we had to, it was raining and storming and so on, but anyway, we had to get from where we landed in this aircraft to Flensburg. I think it was by bus, got up to Flensburg. And we got there, all that was left of the unit that was at Flensburg were 12 Typhoons sitting out there, and the 12 pilots had just got home. And our kits were all gone home, and all we had is what we had with us. They'd shipped everything else back to England. So we were supposed to take these airplanes back to England. Well, that day it was so stormy that we couldn't get off there, so we had to wait another day. The next morning we went off, and you always flew in fours. So the first 4 took off, and then they landed in Eindhoven to refuel, because you couldn't go all the way without refueling. And I was in the second group, and then the third group was behind us. But there'd be maybe an hour between to refuel the 4 airplanes, so you take off. So the ones that landed in Eindhoven first refueled, and they took off, and they got to across England. They got between the clouds and the White Cliffs of Dover, and they got inland and landed quite nicely. Well, we were, say, about an hour later with our 4. And we could see the White Cliffs of Dover when we left the east or the French side. The time we got there, we couldn't get between the clouds and the White Cliffs of Dover. They're pretty high, yeah, but you could sure see them across the channel. So we were up to 14,000 feet to get on top, and we finally got landed at the stations we were supposed to go to. But the storm was moving in more and more, and the 4 that were behind us, they didn't even land at the stations they were supposed to land at. They got scattered all over. So we were lucky to get over there and not get our neck in trouble.
Did the weather wreak havoc a lot?
Oh yeah. I know there was one day that when we were doing operations, in fact I can give you the date if you want me to. I go back here to when we were doing operational flying. Now I don't know whether you're interested in that or not. Oh, here's flying with 175 Squadron, okay. Now, I can name you the guys that were killed. There was, on the 2nd of February in 45, there was a chap by the name of Lyons was killed, crashed and went in. Then there was another one, the name of, on the 14th, there was a name of Townsend went missing. I think he became a prisoner of war. And another pilot officer, Swift, he went missing. That was a couple of days later. And then there was Ashman went missing. This was on the 25th of February. And this Ashman was a guy that it should never have happened to. Yeah, I tell you why. We were out on the aircraft, or on the airport, swinging compass. Now you say, well, what's a swinging compass mean? It means that the compass in the aircraft, it could get a little bit out of synchronization, and they're magnets, as you know. And Jim and myself and the whole group was out there swinging the compass on the aircraft so that we could fly accurately and so on as far as direction was concerned. And I remember the squadron leader come out and he said, I'm looking for volunteers. And I said, volunteers for what? Well, I want to take 4 airplanes and go see if I can get through on something and see if we can find something. And I'd learned long before that you never volunteer for anything. And Jim and I and a few more said, it's strictly volunteer. Yes, we're not going. Because the weather was right down the deck. Well, there's little Ashman. Oh, yeah, I'll go. He was South African. He never came back. Well, he lost one guy, and they never found anything on this trip. He should have stayed on the ground. But he was trying to be a squadron leader. He wanted to show off that he could do it and so on. That was fine. But it didn't work, and the one guy lost his life over it. And if it had been an order, Jim and I would have went, but he didn't know it was volunteers, so he said, no way. Because we both had enough experience that we knew what weather could do. And that's what it did to the poor guy. And one other day I was flying with the squadron. I forget what day it was. If I can find it or not. Anyway, I was taking off with this airplane. I should be able to find it here very shortly.
Did you fly this plane right? Is it always the same specific plane?
If you look in here,
That should be.
got HHW was on I flew most of the time, yeah. But if it was unserviceable, they'd give you another airplane to fly.
Any of the pilots get superstitious about the planes they
I don't think so, no. Don't think so, no. I should have that airplane in here. Oh yes, here it is. And this was on the 21st of February. We were going off on an armed recce. And this particular airplane, it wasn't my usual airplane because it's JEG. It was one that it was a squadron leader that generally flew it, and he was one that had flown Spitfires before. In a Spitfire, you could baby the engine. I think I told you this before. You could throttle back and so on, and lean out the mixture and so on. And the Merlin engine could take this stuff, but the Napier Sabre, you had to keep it pounding all the time. And anyway, I got in this airplane to take off, and this guy had just come back from it. It was rearmed, refueled, and I'm away in the airplane. And on takeoff, what happened, the plugs had been fouled up on coming down on the guy flying it so easily. And by God, it wouldn't take power. I got off the ground about 50 feet, and all of a sudden the engine quit. And I'm sitting there with four rockets under the wings, 2 under each side with a 60-pound warhead on them, and a long-range tank, or 2 long-range tanks full of aviation gas with 45 gallons in each of them. And I'm about 50 feet, and the engine quit, and I'm going down. So there's nothing I can do about it. It won't pick up speed. That's it. So I'm just going to reach down and knock the fuel tanks off, which you could do as a quick move of a lever. I had nope. If I knock them off at this altitude and I land, they're going to come right down and follow right behind me. So I didn't knock them off, and I made a forced landing in the mud. It was mud in Holland, and I mean, I'm talking a foot of mud. I slid into this mud of this airplane, and of course that squashed all the tanks and everything else. They didn't come falling after me. So as soon as it slid to a stop, I'm off the airplane and off the wing into this mud. Looked back, it didn't blow up, so I went back and I picked up the microphone to see if it was still working. The mic was still working, the radio. I called back and said, "This is so-and-so, since it's an airplane." And they said, "Oh, there's people coming out to help me." I said, "They won't get here because it's solid mud." But I know they got me out of there. And what happened to the airplane, I don't know. But this is what happened to the airplane. It was just that it was mishandled in the flight before. I'm not trying to make excuses, but I mean, when they said this could happen. And also, anybody that force landed a Typhoon generally ended up with a bad back. So I was sent to hospital and had X-rays and so on. And again, I said I'm getting a pension for my left foot. I'm also getting one for my back because the X-rays show that I had a cracked vertebrae after this episode. So between the 2 little mishaps I had during the war, I'm getting a little bit of a pension, which isn't taxable. So, but these are the things that,
It's a lot of faith in technology and other men, isn't it? Did you enjoy, Frank, being up there in a plane by yourself?
oh yeah. Yeah, it was really better than trying to teach somebody how to fly.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I enjoyed it, yes, it was very, very good. And another time here I come back with a hydraulic leak. And that meant that I had no brakes. So I came back, and you'll see by some of those pictures if you want to look at them, the type of runways we landed on over there. The ground is so wet and so on basically all the time that they laid wire mesh out, and this is what you landed on. And they'd land, I think they run this mesh out 2,400 feet or something, and you all interlocked together, you know, and so wide. This is what you landed on when the weather was bad. But I got away with that one too, so. But there's one time here, this flight lieutenant Parker, on a Friday the 13th, of April, just before the end of the war. Went out one day and went missing. That was it. And he never returned. And there's another chap that flew Typhoons, by the name of Gordon Crosby. And he was from the Paw in Manitoba. And after the war, he was one of the ones that found the mines at Thompson, Manitoba. Oh no, he was from Flin Flon, pardon me, and the Paw actually, and he flew Typhoons overseas. And there was one day he was telling me, this is long after the war, that he got hit or something and bailed out, and he didn't know what was going on, but then he could just parachute like this and pull the ripcord, and he said nothing happened. And he pulled it again, nothing happened. He thought he pulled it. Then he realized that his right shoulder was broken, and he thought he was making a move, but he wasn't. And he said, I hooked my thumb into the thing and pulled it like this, and the chute opened just enough to break his fall. So he was a lucky boy in that respect. But he was an awful fine guy, and he had his own private airplane, just a single-engine Cessna airplane after the war. And one time out here, we were sitting, we got a phone or a message from him. He was way down in South America or something with this airplane, and he sent this message. He said, I guess I better get this compass fixed. Looks what this airplane's got me now. And but anyway, he retired from up at the Paw, and he was one of the instigators. Him and another guy were geologists, and they found the mine site and so on at Thompson. So he became pretty wealthy out of that. But he moved out to BC apparently. He didn't live to be that many years. I guess 15 years ago, or more, since he died. So he was lucky during the war and got away with it. I guess I was lucky too.
Yeah, well, luck but skill too. Would you say your training adequately prepared you for what awaited you?
I think it did, yeah. I think it helped a great deal. I know we had people come in and fly, one fellow particularly come in and flying Typhoons on operations. And he came back to the airport to land one day, and while coming back to the airport, this one run operations, you come in down at 400 miles an hour towards the airport, and you'd form echelon starboard. Say this was the leader. Well, this guy then would fly over here, and the leader, and then this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and land. This guy was the most inexperienced, I guess. And this one day we'll come back to the airport, and the first guy would pull up, and as he pulled up, he'd drop his wheels and flaps and come back around and land. And the second one, maybe 10 seconds after, and so on. But this guy, this particular day, he pulled up, dropped his wheels, but he stalled the bloody airplane, stalled and spun in on the airport and killed himself. Inexperience. He should have known that this would happen. But how do you accommodate things like that? And there was another time during my experiences that, I don't know whether I should say it or not, but I will. I was home on leave after I had gone instructing at Aylmer. And this was fine. And this young lad from home, he was the preacher's son actually. I won't mention any names. And he was training at the elementary school, initial flying training school in Regina. And apparently he was on first solo, I think, and he spun in on final and stalled the airplane, spinning and killed himself. And I'm home on leave. And the family is the preacher, local preacher, and it's his son. I got called into the house, and Frank, what happened? What do I say? I knew the kid, and if he'd have been a student of mine, I don't think he would ever have been sent solo. Now, don't get me wrong, he was a very clever individual, book-wise and stuff like this, but he lacked coordination. I knew this, he lacked coordination driving a car and stuff. He didn't have the coordination. And if I'd have been teaching and flying, I don't think he'd have ever went solo. I think I'd have washed him out. But whoever sent him solo, he come around on a fine approach and got the airplane too high, got the nose up and stalled and spun right on the edge of Regina. How do you explain that to people? Put me on the spot, and I said, well,